Weekend evening at Linden Company restaurant. Packed dining room, glasses clinking softly. 6 drunk men in expensive clothes harassed 2 groups of women by the window tables, whistling, taking photos without permission, blocking walkways. One man growled, "What are you laughing at? Come sit with us." At the bar, a woman with long brown hair set down her glass and stood up. The restaurant owner walked over and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Don't be stupid, she's former special forces." The entire room went silent. Meet Mara Kovacs, 30 years old, Hungarian-Austrian heritage, long brown hair parted to the side, fair skin, straight nose, coldly beautiful but with warm, calm eyes. Her everyday outfit tells a story. Sand-colored crew neck sweater, dark denim jeans, white sneakers, no flashy jewelry, slender hands with thin calluses on her right index finger knuckle, a thin scar like a thread across her left wrist. Mara had moved to the city of Riversend just 3 months ago, renting a small apartment near the riverbank. By day, she worked logistics for a shipping company. On weekend evenings, she'd sit at Linden Company, drinking tea and reading books. Few people paid attention to her. The young staff jokingly called her the single lady mint tea customer. But Mara's presence revealed careful habits that most people missed. She always chose the table by the bar counter, back against the wall, eyes covering the main entrance, side door, and kitchen access. She tied her hair neatly with a burgundy elastic band and never sat with her back to the windows. Whenever someone walking by caught their chair on something, she'd quietly lift the chair to help, smile briefly, and return to her book. Nobody remembered her face. The casual dismissal she faced was constant but subtle. One evening, regular customers whispered nearby, "That woman looks like an office worker, so fragile, probably afraid of her own shadow." Mara heard them but didn't react. She simply lowered her eyes to the last line of her book, making small notes that looked like wind codes. The restaurant owner, Eric Linden, was 52 years old with graying hair and a steady walk. He knew a little about Mara from one incident. A few weeks earlier, muggers had grabbed a purse outside the restaurant. Mara didn't chase them. She just watched the license plate, called 911, and described everything with unnervingly steady precision. 10 minutes later, police caught the perpetrators. Eric had asked casually, "Do you work in security?" Mara smiled. "Just logistics." But Eric noticed things about her that others missed. The way she positioned herself at tables, how she automatically counted exit routes, the fact that she always paid in cash and never seemed surprised by anything. Tonight was different, though. 6 men in expensive shirts and flashy watches entered at 8:40 p.m. The smell of strong alcohol preceded them through the door. They immediately split up, surrounding 2 groups of women, 3 female colleagues celebrating promotions, and a mother-daughter pair celebrating a birthday. Whistling, unauthorized photos, and crude comments began buzzing like mosquitoes through the restaurant. The young serving staff retreated, hands shaking when they tried to politely intervene. Mara observed everything from her corner position. At first, she didn't stand up. She counted distances between chairs, support columns, emergency exits, floor surface grip, nearest fire extinguisher. Her phone was on silent mode. She took a sip of mint tea and set the cup down in exactly the same spot, like marking invisible coordinates. What nobody in that restaurant knew was that Mara Kovacs had spent years learning to read dangerous situations before they exploded. She'd been trained to assess threats, identify escape routes, and protect civilians without creating additional chaos. But in Riversend, she was just another quiet customer who minded her own business. The contrast between who she really was and how people saw her was about to become dramatically clear. As the 6 men grew bolder and more aggressive, Mara's training kicked in automatically. Her mind began calculating angles, distances, and tactical options. But she also calculated something else: the psychological profile of bullies who operated in groups. They fed off audience reaction. They escalated when challenged directly. They retreated when faced with calm, professional authority. The question was whether she could de-escalate the situation without revealing skills that would raise uncomfortable questions about her past. because Mara had come to Riversend to disappear, not to be noticed. But sometimes staying invisible means stepping into the light at exactly the right moment. In Mara's wallet, she always carried a small piece of embroidered fabric with "Hold the line" stitched by hand. She'd never explained it to anyone. Eric had only glimpsed it once when she paid in cash, then closed her wallet very quickly. The harassment escalated systematically, like predators testing boundaries. The tallest man blocked the path to the women's restroom, smirking. "Want to pass? Ask me nicely first." A young woman tried to push past him, nearly falling when he pressed down lightly on her arm. Another man held his phone close to the face of the mother, holding her little girl, flash firing repeatedly. The child screamed in terror. The staff tried to intervene, but their youth and inexperience showed. Cam, the 21-year-old server, said shakily, "Please respect other customers." One of the men snarled, "Who are you? Get the owner out here." Cam looked desperately toward the counter. Eric emerged from the kitchen, moving quickly but staying calm. Eric caught Mara's eye with a subtle glance that asked, "Need help?" Mara shook her head slightly. Not yet, but the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The largest man looked directly at Mara. "That skinny one's pretty. Come sit with us, sweetheart." Several crude laughs followed. A male customer at a corner table started to stand up to intervene, but his wife grabbed his arm. "Don't!" Fear of violence kept him seated. Mara made the decision to engage, but on her terms. She stood up without hurry, moving like she was simply getting more salt for her meal. When she reached 3 steps from the group of 6 men, she angled herself so the overhead lighting reflected into the tallest man's eyes. A small technique to make opponents squint instinctively. Her voice was low and steady when she spoke. "Put the phones down. Clear the restroom entrance. Give table 12 their space back." One man laughed mockingly. "Who are you to give orders?" Mara didn't blink. "Someone who's responsible if you make the wrong choice." The mockery intensified, but something unexpected happened. The tallest man reached out to touch her shoulder. "Responsible for what?" Mara stepped back half a pace, pressing her shoulder against the wooden support beam, limiting his angle of approach. Her thumb touched a pressure point on his wrist, a movement only people trained in close-quarters combat would use to quickly numb an aggressor's grip. He jerked back reflexively as sharp numbness shot through his hand. "What the hell?" That's when Eric stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying throughout the restaurant. "Enough. If you gentlemen don't know, you should. She's former Special Forces." The entire restaurant fell silent. The sound of a spoon dropping onto a plate echoed off the tiles. The 6 men froze for half a second. One laughed nervously. "Yeah, right." But something in Mara's posture had changed. She rotated her wrist, pulling her sweater sleeve up slightly. A red cord bracelet with 3 knots became visible on her left wrist. Cam gasped. A middle-aged female customer put her hand to her chest and whispered, "Kraken?" She'd served in medical support for military units and recognized the nodding tradition. The group of 6 began repositioning themselves instinctively. 2 men moved to block the rear exit. One kept his phone ready. One stayed by the restroom. 2 others circled toward the windows, creating a horseshoe formation. But Mara was reading the room differently. She glanced at the polished floor, noting how the overhead lights cast shadows at a 7-8-degree angle, meaning there was a blind spot near the bar counter. More importantly, she could see the psychological shift happening. The men were moving from casual harassment to coordinated intimidation. This was the moment that separated professional de-escalation from amateur confrontation. Eric positioned himself where he could observe everything while staying out of the immediate conflict zone. Several customers were reaching for their phones, but Mara knew that recording the incident could escalate rather than help. The key was creating space for dignity, both for the victims and, surprisingly, for the aggressors. Trained operators understood something that civilians didn't. The most dangerous moment comes when cornered opponents realize they're losing face in public. That's when harassment turns into violence. Mara needed to give these men a way to leave without feeling humiliated while ensuring they never returned. The red cord on her wrist wasn't just decoration. Each knot represented a mission where she'd used non-violent tactics to resolve potentially deadly situations. First knot, extraction of hostages without firing a shot. Second knot, de-escalation of a riot through crowd psychology. Third knot, stopping an assault through applied pressure points and psychological positioning. Tonight would test whether those skills worked in civilian settings. The tallest man was studying her more carefully now, noticing details he'd missed before. The way she stood, the calm in her eyes despite the threat, the precision of her earlier movement. "You're serious," he said, but it was a question disguised as a statement. Mara maintained eye contact without staring aggressively. "I'm someone who prefers solutions to problems." In the corner, Eric quietly adjusted the restaurant's lighting, dimming it slightly to reduce the confrontational atmosphere. The psychological environment was shifting. Other customers were watching but not crowding. The staff had moved to protective positions without creating obvious barriers. Everything was being orchestrated to give the 6 men space to make a better choice. But first, they had to understand what choice they were really making. In the jacket hanging on her chair, Mara carried a worn plastic card with CQC-09 etched barely visible. Only when light hit it at an angle could you read it. Eric had glimpsed it once and said nothing. Mara didn't prepare to fight. Instead, she organized the space for civilian safety. "Table 12, she said, addressing the 3 women celebrating promotions. "Stand against the wall, keep phones visible, but cameras pointed down to avoid escalation." "Table 9, she continued to the mother and daughter. "Kitchen exit through the side passage. Cam will show you. Bar counter, lower the lights 1 setting." The room's volume dropped. Softer lighting reduced the aggressive atmosphere. Her approach was pure de-escalation protocol. Control environment, reduce stimulation, create clear pathways for retreat. She looked directly at the apparent leader. 2 minutes to decide. No police called. You leave quietly. Pay what you've used. Nobody gets filmed or recorded. The man squinted. "You threatening us?" Mara's response was precise. "I'm keeping you from committing worse crimes than you already have." But one of the men made a critical error. The guy by the window raised his phone to take close-up photos of one of the young women. Mara rotated half her body using her water glass to block the camera frame, creating only blurred images. Simultaneously, her other hand lightly touched the man's knuckle joint, a pressure point that caused him to drop the phone reflexively without understanding why. "Don't photograph customers without consent," she said quietly. But her voice carried absolute authority. That's when the whispers started near the bar. A male customer asked Eric quietly, "Really? She's special forces?" Eric nodded. "I can't share details. Just know that twice before people called her Viper when she was teaching non-weapon defense techniques." The customer swallowed hard and moved his chair back, clearing space. The confrontation reached its crucial moment when the leader decided to test boundaries. He pushed his chair back and stepped forward, trying to touch her shoulder again, slowly and deliberately, asserting dominance. Mara lowered her center of gravity without retreating. She raised 2 fingers, lightly touching the tendon on his wrist to redirect force if necessary. "Don't force me to choose the painful option," she said in the same steady tone. The group psychology was fracturing. 2 men in the back exchanged uncertain glances, losing confidence. That's when Mara implemented what she called soft pain, civilian CQC techniques designed to stop aggression without causing lasting injury. When the man by the restroom blocked Cam and the mother with child, Mara stepped over and placed her open palm against his forearm, rotating gently with natural body mechanics, causing pain that forced release without bruising or breaking. She didn't look at him, just told Cam, "Go ahead." Cam guided the mother and daughter through to safety. The man stood confused, holding his arm, not understanding how he'd lost strength. "Why do you know how to do that?" the leader demanded. Mara checked the wall clock, counting 20 seconds. Enough time for the kitchen to secure the back door. I'm someone who hated violence enough to learn how to end it in 3 moves. She gave them their options clearly. 2 choices. Leave now. Eric deletes the security footage from the last 10 minutes, specifically protecting female customers' faces. Stay here, wait for 911, and explain to lawyers why you were filming people without consent and blocking walkways. The leader looked around. No more supportive audience. Dimmed lights, clear exit routes controlled by calm, professional authority. Eric confirmed with a nod. I'll vouch for this. Leave peacefully. Pay your tab and go. 2 of the men pulled out wallets awkwardly. Credit cards rushed through payment. The leader stood for 5 more seconds, then shrugged. Some other time. Mara didn't look at him again. She returned to her table and picked up her teacup. No trembling, controlled breathing. They headed for the door, but one man couldn't resist a final power play. Near the exit, one man grabbed a wine bottle from the display shelf, intending to throw it for dramatic effect. Mara didn't run toward him. She touched the edge of her chair, nudging it into the bottle's trajectory, reducing velocity so the bottle broke harmlessly on the floor instead of hitting anyone. She looked up calmly, saying nothing. Her silence was louder than any shouting. The door closed. Outside wind briefly entered, like washing away the smell of alcohol. Scattered applause started, but Mara raised her hand to stop it. No applause. Keep things normal so they don't come back, she said quietly. The aftermath revealed more about Mara's identity. An older customer approached Eric. Former Special Forces. Really? Eric lowered his voice. I wasn't supposed to say anything, but I've seen her twice before diffuse situations that could have turned deadly. She has techniques I've never seen. The customer looked toward Mara, who was calmly organizing napkins and straightening her table setting. What unit? I don't know specifics, but people who've worked with her mentioned Kraken operations. Joint Task Force stuff. Classified. Understanding dawned around the restaurant. Kraken unit was legendary among military communities. An unofficial joint special operations group that specialized in impossible extractions and surgical interventions. They'd been disbanded years ago due to political pressure, their methods considered too unorthodox for official oversight. But the skills remained. Cam approached Mara hesitantly. Ma'am, how did you know exactly what to do? Mara looked up from her book. Same way you know how to carry multiple plates without dropping them. Practice. But where did you learn? Places where getting it wrong meant people didn't go home to their families. The simple statement carried the weight of experience that couldn't be taught in any school. Eric brought her a fresh cup of tea, steam rising in the calmer atmosphere. Thank you, he said simply. You don't thank people for doing what's necessary, Mara replied. But Eric noticed something else. When she reached for the cup, the fabric embroidered with "Hold the Line" was briefly visible in her wallet. Now he understood what it meant. She'd held the line tonight, not with violence, but with professional competence applied to civilian protection. The restaurant slowly returned to normal conversation, but everyone understood they'd witnessed something extraordinary. Not a fight, but the prevention of violence through skills most people never knew existed. Type, I owe a debt. If you've ever been silently protected by someone who kept you safe without asking for credit. The cleanup was methodical and non-violent. Cam and 2 staff members swept up glass fragments. Eric reviewed security footage, editing to protect female customers' faces as promised. Mara stood by the entrance for 3 minutes, listening to footsteps outside. When certain the men had truly left, she returned to her table. The gratitude was genuine and emotional. The mother holding her daughter approached with tears in her eyes. Weren't you scared? Mara smiled slightly, terrified, scared that someone might get hurt because I was 1 second too slow. Eric made an unexpected proposal. This Wednesday evening we close early. Would you teach the staff de-escalation techniques? Mara nodded. 3 principles, 3 short commands. Clear, not insulting. Zone division. Clear escape routes for vulnerable people. Negotiate with real consequences, not ego. She wrote on the chalkboard by the counter, Hold the line. You don't need to be strong, just right. The impact spread organically through small changes. A few days later, someone had taped a note inside the women's restroom. If you feel unsafe, go to the kitchen and say mint tea special. Staff will take you to the back exit. At the corner of the counter, 3 small red cords were placed in a wooden box with a card. 3 knots, 3 reminders: breathe, observe, divide. The story spread without needing a name. Neighboring establishments asked Eric about his Saturday night protocol. Eric shared a brief PDF: table layouts, hallway management, strategic lighting, 3-word commands. He never mentioned Mara. That was her request. But the techniques spread to other restaurants, other businesses, other community spaces. People began understanding that safety came not from confrontation, but from preparation and calm professionalism. A week later, Mara was back at her usual table, reading and drinking mint tea. A young woman approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, are you the one who—" Mara looked up calmly. "I'm someone who was in the right place at the right time. Could you teach me what you did? I work at a coffee shop and sometimes—" Wednesday evening. Eric will have details. Word spread through social networks, but not in the way most viral stories spread. No dramatic videos, no names, no claims of heroism. Just practical information. How to recognize escalating situations, how to create safe spaces, how to de-escalate without fighting. Community groups began requesting similar training. Mara taught basic awareness, reading body language, positioning for safety, using environment to create calm rather than confrontation. But she always emphasized the same principle. The goal isn't to win. The goal is for everyone to go home safely. The red cord bracelet became a quiet symbol in Riverside. Other women began wearing similar bracelets, not claiming military service, but committing to awareness and mutual protection. Coffee shops, bookstores, and small businesses developed their own versions of the mint tea safety protocols. Community watch groups focused less on confrontation and more on professional de-escalation. The change was subtle but significant. Public spaces felt safer, not because of increased security, but because of increased competence. People learned to recognize dangerous situations before they exploded. They learned to create space for dignity while maintaining firm boundaries. Most importantly, they learned that heroism often looked like preventing problems rather than solving them dramatically. Mara continued her quiet routine: work, tea, books, home. But now she was part of a community that understood safety as a shared responsibility, requiring specific skills. The fabric in her wallet still read, "Hold the line." But now she was teaching others how to hold it too. Type, "I will live with honor," if you believe that calmness and skill can prevent violence before it starts. Titles don't define courage, actions do. That night, everyone called her Special Forces, but Mara simply called herself a customer who knew how to stand in the right place. 6 men could have turned a pleasant dinner into traumatic memories. One calm person turned it into a lesson about boundaries. De-escalation is a community skill, not just a military one. Not everyone learns close quarters combat, but everyone can learn 3 short commands: zone division, strategic lighting, and how to create escape routes for vulnerable people. Safe communities don't come from confrontation. They come from preparation and steady breathing before situations get heated. The quiet hero philosophy shaped everything Mara did. The red cord with 3 knots, the embroidered fabric reading, "Hold the line," the worn card marked CQC09. These were memories of nights when nobody knew her name. Mara didn't want applause. She just set her teacup down in the exact same spot each time she sat down, like reminding herself, "I'm here to keep the path clear when needed." Her approach revealed something important about real strength. True power isn't about dominating others. It's about creating space for everyone to maintain dignity while establishing firm boundaries. The techniques she used worked because they de-escalated rather than escalated. They protected rather than punished. They taught rather than dominated, In our daily lives, we all encounter situations where someone crosses boundaries inappropriately. The question isn't whether we're trained in military tactics. The question is whether we're prepared to respond professionally rather than emotionally. Learning to stay calm under pressure is a life skill everyone can develop. Understanding how to read dangerous situations before they explode protects entire communities. Knowing how to create space for people to make better choices prevents violence rather than responding to it. Most importantly, practicing these skills in small situations prepares us for larger ones. If you've ever been dismissed as too quiet, too gentle, or too peaceful, remember Mara's example. Strength isn't measured by how loud you can shout. It's measured by how effectively you can make a room quieter when necessary. Learn some basic de-escalation techniques for your workplace, your community spaces, your family gatherings. Practice 3 clear commands instead of emotional arguments. Study how to position yourself for safety while keeping escape routes open for others. Most importantly, develop the calm confidence that comes from preparation rather than panic. Because somewhere, someone needs exactly the skills you're developing. Someone needs you to be the person who knows how to hold the line, not through force, but through professional competence applied with compassion. The goal isn't to become a warrior. The goal is to become someone others can count on when situations require steady hands and clear thinking. Be prepared not for credit, but for responsibility, because being the right person in the right place at the right time can change everything.
If you believe in stories that touch the heart like this one, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to The Veteran Story. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.